Let's go.
All right, so we are joined by Dr. Sharon Simmons, Jackson State University Professor of Entrepreneurship, native of the Virgin Islands, graduate of Hampton University and University of Virginia. We are so thankful for joining us today. We've got a room full here with us at Velma Jackson High School, our entrepreneurship class, and we are recording this for our friends at Germantown High School and Ridgeland High School and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I know you got a busy schedule, so we appreciate it. Now, before we get into entrepreneurship and the things you do there at Jackson State and your entrepreneurship background, I think it's very important that we spend just a little bit to understand, for people that may not know, you are from Charlotte Amalie of the Virgin Islands in the Caribbean, but that is part of the United States. The Virgin Islands is a foreign country. You don't need a passport to go there. You can spend American money there. You can take your cell phone there and have coverage anywhere. So it is part of the United States. So even though you are from the Virgin Islands, you are 100% American.
Yes, I am. I'm 100% American.
The Virgin Islands has representation in Washington, D.C. So, you know, one of the most beautiful areas on the planet. I really got to get their representation. So I just wanted everybody to understand that. So there's no confusion that the Virgin Islands is part of the United States. Now,
it is. It is.
So before you came to Jackson State, you went to Hampton University in Hampton, Virginia.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did.
So, take us a little bit through that journey of HBCU of Hampton University, and then going to PWI, two great schools, the University of Virginia as well. And because we have some actually have all seniors with us today, and we'll have some juniors that'll see this later. So we want them to start thinking about their college choices. So obviously you're partial to Jackson State and the great program you have there. So, but talk a little about what it was for you having a HBCU undergrad and a PWI post-secondary advanced degree after your undergrad.
Yes. So with having an HBCU undergrad, first of all, like in an HBCU, it's friends for life. And so it's a long-term experience, and it's all focused on, you know, building a legacy, keeping a legacy, friends for life at an HBCU. So that's the one thing to consider when you're at an HBCU. When you go into a PWI, one of the things that my experience is going to a PWI is that you have a little bit of both, right? So you have the legacy that comes with you from being part of a HBCU, and then as being part of a PWI. So I've been a part of Virginia and Syracuse, right?
Oh, I forgot about Syracuse as well, yeah.
Yeah, Virginia and Syracuse, two PWIs. And so what's interesting is that you create your own experience within, especially like a large PWI, right? So you get to choose what type of experience you want, right? You get to choose whether or not you want to still keep a close-knit experience with an HBCU style, or if you want to branch out and engage in different types of experiences with different types of people, with different types of culture. So you get to decide in a PWI. What I would suggest is it's good to get a little bit of both of the exposures. And my HBCU experience also is what actually prepped me to be successful at the PWI, because it gives you like the sense of self-efficacy. It gives you the a sense of self, that you can be in any environment. And so that's what I found from my experience.
That's awesome. Now, we've had several guests that went to Jackson State, and you have you've really ramped up that the entrepreneurship program there at Jackson State. And I was looking at some of the courses, and it really is things that entrepreneurs need, because we have several guests in this class from all over the country, all over the world. And a lot of them have great concepts. A lot of them have great marketing. They have a can't miss product. They are great at managing their staff, but a lot of them say the same thing. Nobody ever taught me how to run a business.
That's true.
and what your program does is it gives students a chance to start their own concept. And I'll let you hear some of these that we have in this class here in a minute. But it gives them a chance to start their own concept, but it gives them a background on how businesses are run. Because, for example, last year we had my friend Dr. Angela Shannon, who is runs the owner of Happy Tummy's GI Clinic here in Jackson. She's a
Mhm.
doctor. She goes, I learned all about how to take care of patients. I learned
Mhm.
all about all this stuff in medical school, but when I opened the door, I did not have a clue how to run that business. And so many businesses fail because of that. So how does your program prepare students for that? Because even if they don't want to be a full-time entrepreneur, what do these classes in this program do to prepare students for that? Because that is a huge obstacle to overcome.
Yeah, so what the program actually does is that it creates a safe environment for you to actually learn on how to get better at running a business, right? So when you jump out into the real world and you're out doing business for real, um, it's you, and everything you have is on the line, right? Everything, it's all you, whether it's all your resources, it's all you. And resources, it's your social capital, your financial capital, your human capital, is all you, right? And the thing that the a program at Jackson State is that it gives you it gives you the exposure to what works, what doesn't work. It gives you the exposure to what best practices are in terms of what's feasible and not feasible. It gives you exposure to understanding your financing and your resources and how much resources you use at any given point in time. And so by learning that in the Jackson State context, in the it gives you the lessons that other people that don't go through that process, that they're learning on the ground with in real time. And so that's the benefit of doing entrepreneurship in the university context.
Yeah, and one thing I think a lot of kids don't understand is that, well, first of all, the big misconception on social media is that, and again, and they get sick of me talking about this, but I'm a huge fan of Jasmine Sullivan, but in her song, she says, "I'm going to move to Atlanta, open a business, I'm going to be rich." It's a lot more difficult than that. And also, just because you're an entrepreneur doesn't mean you have to jump in head first. You can have a degree in entrepreneurship and just be a great employee. Thinking like an entrepreneur can make you a great employee. You can be a part-time entrepreneur, or something we haven't really talked a whole lot about in this class is the franchise option. A lot of these national brands are looking for franchise entrepreneurs. So there is a lot of options that people may not realize that you can do as an entrepreneur with entrepreneurship background.
And that's and actually that's, I'm glad you said that, Greg, because at the end of the day, what we teach from an entrepreneurship perspective is mindset. And it's a mindset of being able to design anything,
Yeah.
whether it's your life, whether it's a business, whether it's a attitude and approach. It's entrepreneurship really is mindset, and it's about design, right? And when you take that approach, you realize you can do it inside of a large company. You could do it in your own company. You can do it in at any level of the company, as long as you understand that entrepreneurship is not just about following a written and what's interesting is that it's not just about following a set of written rules and guidelines, but also being able to understand the systems that are underneath different things and to be able to navigate. So I will say that for me, why I decided, so I teach entrepreneurship and I'm also an entrepreneur, right? My background is that I spent a lot of years working for a large company, and I worked for professional services companies for a very long time. And what I found was that what I was doing in those companies was entrepreneurial. Like what was making me
Yep.
succeed was entrepreneurship. Like, am I seeing where problems are? Am I taking the time to think about what resources the companies need? Am I really engaging with the teams that are around me? Those are all entrepreneurship lessons. And if you really have a handle of that, then you're going to succeed at anything. And so one of the things that I've practiced in the large firms is that I tended to look at um, I tended to look at the people that were a level above me or two levels above me, the people that were where I wanted to go, right? What I wanted to be. And I would emulate them and not necessarily my peers. And that is entrepreneurial thinking, right? That is creativity, that's innovation, that's design thinking. And so for the seniors that are there, what I would say is, you want to engage in a process that would allow you to go through design thinking, right? And so from the perspective of an HBCU, to bring it back to HBCUs, um, from the perspective of the HBCU, it gives you sort of like a comfort level in terms of who you are and your self-efficacy. It takes away a lot of the noise so that you can focus on designing your best self, right? And one of the things is, if you're able to do that, once you enter into a PWI concept or a context, then you have the efficacy beliefs that you need because you've been designing to deal with the other variables that will come at you.
Yeah, and one of those variables that I hear a lot of entrepreneurs talk about is the financial side, because I know you have a background in accounting. And again, you could have $3 million in sales, but if you haven't paid any self-employment tax and you haven't, properly done your property tax, if you haven't looked ahead and seen how much your rent is going to be, it doesn't matter how great your concept is. The financial side, it may not be as fun or as sexy as the other stuff, but that's where a lot of small business owners can get kind of tripped up when it comes to not knowing things. And that's where a program like yours can be so valuable, because you teach potential entrepreneurs how to handle that financial side.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we do. I actually do. Yes. And so I wanted to come back to you on something that you said with regards to the different types of entrepreneurship, and I really wanted to really emphasize this concept of franchising, because that's something that we don't really talk about, right? And I've seen franchising from in all different levels, right? Whether you're franchising a concept or you're franchising a business or you're even franchising a lifestyle. But franchising is something that we often take for granted. But it's one of the ways that the entrepreneurs that we emulate across society, they many of them have succeeded by taking someone else's concept and really boosting it and growing. So when you're thinking about entrepreneurship, and one of the things when you come into a program, you learn that, you know what, I don't have to be the creator or the innovator. I just need to have the gumption, and I need to have the belief that I could actually take action, and to take the actions, and I could take something and I could just explode it. And so that's one of the things about entrepreneurship we don't really talk about a lot, but it's for seniors, especially if you're smart and you don't have like a lot of resources. One of the best way to leverage those resources is to do a franchising type concept.
Yeah, and you see a lot of that in around here, especially in the hotel industry and in the fast food industry. You have, because a friend of mine owns 10 Wendy's. He obviously did not create Wendy's, and he is not making their corporate decisions, but he is the franchise owner of 10 of the locations in the Jackson area. And then you see a lot of the hotels as well. A Days Inn is not owned by Days Inn. It have an independent contractor that has bought the franchise rights to that location.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the same with some Marriotts. So yes, yeah.
Now, something else I wanted to talk about is, especially for some of these kids that are wanting to get into entrepreneurship right out of high school, a big mistake that I see with so many young business owners, especially Black business owners, is immediately they're in the 17-year-old mindset and they're thinking about what they could afford, and they don't charge enough. That is the number one mistake I see young entrepreneurs make. So how do you teach your students to set their pricing when it comes to setting their price to be competitive but still be profitable?
Pricing is a very interesting concept, because pricing comes from there are different approaches to doing pricing, right? So you can set your pricing based on, what is this costing me, and what is a comfortable markup that I would be happy with in terms of being able to cover the cost and then being able to do the things that I want to do, right? That's one version of pricing, right? Another version of pricing is actually value pricing.
Yep.
What is it worth to you, right, Greg? By this product that I'm bringing out into the market, how are you benefiting from it? What value do you derive, right? And I could price it based on your demand for it, right? And how many other people are offering it. So another way to look at pricing is from the perspective of the customer. How much do they value it and need it? And how much can I raise this price so that, because I know they have to buy it because they value it and need it, right? So one approach is, what is it costing me and what am I comfortable with? Another approach is, how much do you value it and how much do you need it? And to price it based on that. So the other thing about pricing is you also want to take into account how many other people are offering this, right? So to what extent, you may need it, Greg, you may value it, but there may be four other people that's offering the same service in the exact same way. And so I need to come lower on my prices so that you buy my product and not someone else's. So when you're thinking about pricing, you want to think about all of those perspectives. So the first thing, though, the baseline is, are you pricing based on what it's costing you, or are you pricing based on what the value is to the customer? Those are two different starting points. And then from there, you can set your price. So going back to the perspective of the 17-year-old, 17-year-olds are different. I just had a student, he might have been like 20 or 21, but he walked in with a Coach bag backpack, right? And that backpack probably cost like several $100s, right? So in terms of what can be afforded, you want to take into account that, like the 17-year-old Greg has a different perspective than us, right? For me, for a backpack, I'm thinking about, like what's the most basic, but then for a 17-year-old, there's a different intrinsic value that they put on their pricing. So I would say trust yourself. And then as a starting point, ask yourself, how much would I pay for this service? How valuable would it be to me? How high would I go? And then start from there as your price and then start working backwards.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And one thing I always say is that if people will pay it, you need to charge it, and if people will buy it, you need to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And that just it takes some basic market research, but it can be done. I know it's a science to it, but it can be done. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about before I get to the student's question is we've been doing we did an ADA model, and we've been doing the promotional mix. So when it comes to promotional mix, obviously you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket with one type of promotion. You have to mix it up. You have to reach people different ways. And obviously it's going to depend on your target market and your product and what your budget is and things like that. But what are some of the best practices that you've told your students about their own promotional mix, and things that you think make up a solid promotional mix when it comes to a startup?
Well, it depends on how you would like to approach it, right? And it depends on what your product is. So I would say you want to think about, when you're dealing with your promotional mix, you want to think about all the different ways that value can be had from whatever it is you're selling, right? And you want to think about the prioritization of all the different aspects of your product that brings value, right? So that's the first thing. When you're dealing with the promotional mix, you want to think about all of that. And then you want to package it for different customers, right? And so right now, for instance, I'm doing a marketplace simulation with my entrepreneurship students, right? And what we are doing is we're actually looking at the different markets for a product. And we're looking at, in those different markets, the people, what do they actually value, right?
There you go.
Are some people looking for recreational attributes, or some people looking for functional attributes, or some people looking for something that's emotional driven, right? And we are packaging the same product, but we're putting different features onto each of the versions of the product, so that depending on which market it is and who we're selling it to, they're going to be more attracted to it, right? So when you're dealing with your promotional mix, you want to start with your baseline capability. At a base level, what's my platform, right? What's the basic thing that I'm selling? and then you want to create different versions of it. The other thing you want to do when you're thinking about your promotional mix is you want to think about, okay, this is my bread and butter, right? This is the main thing that I have going for me, right? What else is related to my bread and butter item that can be part of what I'm offering or part of how the market sees me,
There you
right?
go.
And when you think about that, then you start thinking about different ways to actually not have your business relying just on one thing, but on different things. And so you may have a customer that bought your baseline product, but they're looking for other things too. So that provides you a way to grow and to be sustainable.
Yeah, and again, if you can offer something else that that your competition cannot, that's going to set you apart, and that gives you the opportunity to charge a little bit more,
Yeah.
and that perceived value will go even higher, because if, even if it's just $1 or two more per transaction, that adds up a lot over time.
Yeah.
But I do have some questions from the students, and I'll tell you about their concepts that they've come up with in the class as well. And
Okay.
these are all seniors. This
Okay.
first one is Miles Woodard. He's interested in starting a gaming studio that gears toward Black game designers to let them design games.
Yes. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I got buzzed by the office.
Okay. Okay.
But he wants to start a gaming studio that lets Black game designers come up with game designs of all platforms. And
Okay.
he asked, what are some things early entrepreneurs struggle with that should have an easy solution?
Oh wow. Um, some of the things that the early entrepreneurs that struggle with is basically like the human aspects of it, the human resources, um, and the people to carry out the different functions. And that's an easy solution, right? Because there are people that volunteer, there are people that are available, and so that's one thing that people may struggle with. Um, the other thing that people may struggle with is the timing of things, right? The logistics, getting everything lined up in the right time to happen in the right sequence is something that people may struggle with. The other thing is the confidentiality, right? You're designing something that requires a level of, some people can know, some people can't know, no one can really know everything. And so the being able to secure that intellectual property so that your game could be designed and the user can have an experience that's expected is one of the challenges that the startup will have.
Yeah, and that intellectual property law is something, you may think it's dumb, but you have to know it, or it can cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
This is a Marion Bolton. He wants to get into the trucking industry. He wants to get a CDL, learn the business for a few years, save some money, and then open his own trucking company. So he has some experience driving, but that's what he's looking to do. And he said, if I wanted to start a business, what would be the main things I would need to have in line before I started?
Ooh. A trucking company. Well, if you're trying to do trucking, and some of the main things you would need to have in line is you would need a base of people that need something trucked.
That's what a lot of people don't realize. You can't just say, I'm gonna have a trucking company, here I go. You got to have some shipments you got to make.
You need some shipments that you need made. You need to be able to have access to the whole line, right? So that you need to have access to the whole route
Yeah.
with the trucking company. And so, but the main thing is having people that need something shipped, so that you have a service to provide.
Yeah, and I think he's got a pretty good plan. He doesn't want to just jump into it. He wants to learn the business first, which I think, again, even with your program, not knowing how to run a business, even with a great concept, can be detrimental.
Yes, that's true.
This is Octavia Johnson. She actually yesterday became the state champion for the Technology Student Association Future Technology Teacher. She wants to be a teacher, but she also has a business concept with her and her sister wanting to start online tutorials for Black hair care, specifically geared toward non-Black parents, which I think is a really cool concept. So she obviously wants to have it be a teacher full time, but wants to have this on the side with her sister, and they really have a cool concept in that. But she asked, what have you enjoyed the most about being an entrepreneur?
What I enjoy the most about being an entrepreneur, I would say that what I enjoy the most is I guess, the stress of it sometimes. Um, because when you when you when you make it, because you go through different stages, right? You have the idea stage, and then you have the entrepreneur stage where you are actually involved in the creativity and innovation. And it's stressful, it's ambiguous, it's scary, but it's actually the best part of it, right? Because then once you cross the hurdle to okay, I have something successful and established now, and now I'm at a different level of it, then it becomes sort of like routinistic. And so that's why you find sometimes that entrepreneurs, like, they keep coming back down to do, because the fun is in the journey, right? It's in the process, right? And so the more detached you get from it, the the more it becomes less entrepreneurial, right? So that's the best part of it.
Yeah, and that's funny because when I was in grad school at LSU, I actually met the founder of Raising Cane's, and he said kind of the same thing. He was like, even on his business card, it says CEO/fry cook. And he's like, sometimes I just want to go work in the restaurant. So uh, that's a great point. If you can come up with a
Yeah,
concept where you can still,
yeah,
even if you grow, you can still be involved in the hands-on day-to-day stuff, at least to a certain extent.
yeah,
I think that would be a lot more enjoyable than just having to do, all the executive stuff all the time. So being able
hmm,
to find that balance, I think, is really cool, and I agree. This is Shania Charleston. She wants to get into online clothing boutique just as a part-time entrepreneur, but it's still a great market, especially in the Mississippi area. But she asked, what made you want to get into teaching as opposed to full-time entrepreneurship?
ooh, um, I wouldn't say that. That's a difficult question because it goes back to how you define entrepreneurship, I guess.
Ah,
Because I do consider myself to be a full-time entrepreneur, and I am a teacher as well. So it's kind of like not an either or. And so in the classroom, I'm an entrepreneur. Outside of the classroom, I'm an entrepreneur.
yeah.
And so I would say I can't answer that question because that would require me to have a dichotomy, and um, I can't.
Yeah. But a friend of ours is Dr. Tammy Simpson over there at Jackson State, the founder of the hair luxury company.
Hmm.
And she said, even no matter how successful she gets on her company, she's still going to teach because one, she enjoys teaching.
Hmm.
And also she wants some sort of stability in a salary and the benefits. So that's things that she doesn't have to pay for.
Hmm.
And I didn't, honestly, I did not even realize until we started having these guests that so many of these entrepreneurs still remain
Yeah.
at least part-time employees
Yes.
in order to have, especially the ones with children, to make sure they have some sort of stability when it comes to income and
Yeah.
benefits. Because when you are entrepreneur and nothing else, that can be extremely expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I just got one more from the students. This is Justin Clerk. He's also interested in the gaming side. He's more interested in starting a gaming design studio to come up with gaming concepts by online users. And he asked, what would be the most important or the most effective form of advertising in a business?
For an online studio, I guess demonstration.
The walkthroughs and things like that.
The demonstration. Yeah. So if you're gonna do like an online studio, yeah, it would be like to demonstrate the product, like to use different windows to show the customer like what exactly like what exactly the experience is.
Yeah, I agree. And just, and again, and that could be, and I think that's a very important promotional tool. And so many things we see it online all the time or on TV all the time with, I love using the example of the cleaning products. Here's what theirs does. Here's what ours does. Here's what you get when you buy ours. That's what theirs does. So, being able to show tangible evidence of what your product can do, especially when there is some experience involved, I think is extremely important. Now we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule. But before we go, first of all, tell us why they should consider the Jackson State Entrepreneurship Program. Then tell us why entrepreneurship needs these young people, especially these young Black business owners, to help build our economy.
Wow. So the entrepreneurship program at Jackson State is it's very interesting because it's actually run by entrepreneurs, and it's very well connected to the entrepreneurial ecosystem of Black entrepreneurs throughout the world, right? And so that's where this entrepreneurship program really comes into play.
That is awesome.
And hmm?
That is awesome.
Yeah, and so and that's where it really comes into play. So I would really recommend if you're thinking about, and what was the second part of the question?
Why does entrepreneurship need these kids, especially these young Black business owners, to help
And
build our economy?
and entrepreneurship needs the young Black business owners, because you know what? At the end of the day, you're the ones that you care. You're the ones that care about your communities. Like um, when you talk to a Jacksonian in particular, you will go the extra mile for Jackson, right? You will go that extra mile, right? And you will provide more value into the community than most people do. So like when you hear the conversation that says entrepreneurship should always be encouraged because it's about value creation and it lifts the economy. Well, the truth about entrepreneurship is that entrepreneurship is about profit, right?
Yeah.
And if there's no profit, there's no entrepreneurship. But the secret to that is understanding that in the profit, there is a social profit and there is a personal profit.
Yep.
And why you should become an entrepreneur is because when you're actually allocating the profit, you're more likely to allocate less into your pocket and more into the social value, right? You're likely to return more of your profit back to the community.
Yep.
And so that's why you need to be an entrepreneur, because when people come with others, and I'll say others, outsiders who are not part of the community that you are vested in, when outsiders come into your community and they are the ones extracting the profit, that profit leaves the community and goes into their community, right? It doesn't circulate. So you should become an entrepreneur because your profit will circulate in your community. And you're also, even if you leave that community, you're more likely to look back and to reach back and to provide, to inject some of your profit back into the community and do that social lifting. So that's why you should think about becoming an entrepreneur. And I will say this is very important. If you decide to take an entrepreneurship degree at a university, um, one of the things that you want to know is that what you learn, it may be 5 years before you actually decide to implement it, right?
Absolutely.
So don't feel that you have to learn what you're learning and jump on implementing it right away, because most individuals, you take what you learn and then you gather your resources together so that when you actually make that leap, you're actually making that leap with resources.
Absolutely. That is the best way I've heard it explained. And I think that is another huge mistake people make. You can learn a business first before you jump in and use the resources you have. I think that is a great point.
Yeah.
But again, thank you so much. If they're interested in the entrepreneurship program in Jackson State, how they get in touch with you?
Oh, if you're interested, I'll send you my contact information, but I'm very easy to find if you're interested in the entrepreneurship program at Jackson State. So I will, if you want to reach me, you can email me at Sharon.Simmons, SHARON .SIMMONS at JSUMS.edu. Okay. And if you want to reach me in the community, you can feel free to email me there too as well, and I will respond. So I love email and phone calls. If you want to text me, you can feel free to text me at 973-567-0550 and introduce yourself, and I will definitely respond. 973-567-0550. And Greg, one more thing. There is a program that I do in the summer, and I'm going to be doing it again and that program deals with high school students and sort of introducing them to a different side of Jackson. And so last summer I worked with, last summer I worked with Roland Powell, who is, do you know Roland Powell? So
I know of Roland Powell.
Last summer I worked with Roland Powell of Merrimack and Tony Cooley of Cool Systems. And what we did was we did a small program for high school students that we went golfing, and we did a couple of things just to introduce you to a side of Jackson that you may or may not be exposing yourself to. And so this summer we're going to do that in conjunction with another program that's happening through Jackson State. And so if you're interested in that, it's for high school students. If you're interested in being a part of it, please reach out to me and let me know. And this program is sort of designed to get students to experience a different side of Jackson. So we dined and we engaged in sports activities, and then also we had some roundtable conversations with some mentors from different industries, depending on what the students were interested in.
That's incredible. So much great stuff you're doing over there at Jackson State, and you've only been there a couple of years. That's really cool. You've done a lot in just such a short amount of time. But Dr. Sharon Simmons, Jackson State University, Entrepreneurship, thank you so much for joining us today.
Nice to meet you, Greg, and nice to meet everybody online.
All right. See you soon, my friend.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.